Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. Every watch you see here is in stock and ready for delivery, so reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for all of your purchase, pricing, and availability questions. Let's start with a Grand Seiko watch built for the anniversary of the brand back in 2020, 40 millimeters in stainless steel. You can see here we have the 44GS case, and this is the SBGH281 with Grand Seiko's signature corporate blue. It's a lovely watch that showcases the best of Grand Seiko dial making. Diamond cut, micro-faceted, micro-finished components that are actually crafted by hand by folks who just do this all day, creating world-class dial furniture that is then placed and caulked by hand. Grand Seiko dials handmade and hand-finished. The case, Zaratsu finish, so that is the Zolitz machine, tin plate polishing, that is practiced by the folks at Grand Seiko. Please excuse my fingerprints. This is a mirrored surface that is optically smooth and gorgeous. It takes about 3 years to master that particular craft, and you can see it's time well spent. The watch does feature the high beat caliber 9S85. You always know on a Grand Seiko because it says on the dial. 55-hour power reserve, 10 beats per second like a Zenith Primero. You can see it has that sweep, not quite spring drive smooth, but smoother than, for example, an 8 beat per second watch. Taking a look at the case back, we'll get a look at that movement, as well as the dedication and the edition number. 1500 made for the 60th anniversary of Grand Seiko, 1960 to 2020. A lovely watch that wears nicely. It's only about 46 millimeters lug to lug. And you can see it's perfectly matched to my cuff. I swear I didn't plan that. But inboard of the edge of my wrist, you can see that even pulling the bracelet fairly tight, the lugs are well inboard and the fit is easy. I'll move out a little bit so you can see it better in proportion. My wrist is 16 centimeters circumference. You can see even relative to most cuffs, this is going to fit beautifully. Japanese watchmaking at its finest. Let's take a look at an alternative from Switzerland. Now, this is another blue dial full bracelet steel sports watch, but of a very different character. This is an edition launched in 2014 from Zenith. It's the Chronomaster tribute to Charles Vermeau. Charles Vermeau was a factory foreman at Zenith who refused to scrap or sell for scrap the Zenith Primero tooling. That was about 1975, circa 1984-85. All of a sudden there was a resurgent interest in mechanical chronographs. The factory is trying to figure out how it can supply customers with this now suddenly in-demand mechanism. Vermeau comes forward, says all the tools and the jigs still exist. The Primero comes back, so this is a tribute to him. 42 millimeters in diameter in steel. You can see this is the Charles Vermeau. You can also see that the Vermeau edition is a chronometer. Not every version of this watch is. You can also see that, while a little bit unexpected, it's 100 meters water resistant. So on a bracelet, this is a true let it fly sports watch. Get it wet, swim with it, not a problem. You could also appreciate that the dial continues one of the few really enduring and resonant elements added by Terry Natoff during his controversial tenure at Zenith. The idea of an open dial that shows you the escapement, that was his. He brought that in around 2003, and it stayed in the collection. It's an effective way of expressing that which makes the Primero special. So 10 beats per second, 36,000 vibrations per hour. A few things to note here. You would not simply open up the dial and see what you see here if this were a conventional caliber 400 or 4000. You got to remember that the bridges and the plate have been cut away to make this caliber 4061 interesting to look at from the dial side. So you can see the balance, you can see the escapement. Note the escapement is fully silicon, so it can operate with ultra-low friction, anti-magnetic qualities, and minimal, if perhaps even zero lubrication in this application. Take a look at the spokes of the escape wheel. They are the Zenith Star logo. How cool is that? And then we've got this enormous extended pinion off the fourth wheel that acts as a tri-spoke. Quick loom shot, we'll take a look. There's really no shortage here, although there is sort of a dark quarter. 50 hours power reserve, column wheel, lateral clutch, very crisp column wheel action. Fascinating bracelet with every link removable. You can see how the links are sunken into each other, so there's very little lateral play, and the structural integrity of the bracelet is superb. It's fairly large across the wrist, so I'm going to recommend it for a wrist of my size or larger, so 16 centimeters circumference or up. It's not a huge watch, but it's definitely what you would call a full-sized watch. It has a dramatically boxed and cambered crystal. Really, before the glass box sapphire was en vogue, they were doing it at Zenith on the Chronomasters. Great looking watch that stood the test of time, like the El Primero itself. Now, I mentioned that Terry Natoth introduced the open dial to the Zenith catalog, and so here's the Chronomaster Open, as introduced in 2003. We're back to the origin of the species now. You can see many of the same elements, albeit with a metal anchor, conventional pallet stones, and a metal escape wheel. You can also see that the tri-spoke is a little bit less involved. It doesn't have any luminescence. It has not been blued, but the dial is a lovely combination of silver, white, and black accents. Taking a look, the hands have been blackened, the indices have been blackened, the power reserve scale blackened. So it's a double complication. It is a chronograph and a power reserve, 50 hours, automatic winding. It's a 45 millimeter watch that's 53.5 lug to lug and 56.6 from end link to end link. But what you'll notice is when it goes on my wrist, it doesn't actually look substantially larger than the Chronomaster 42. I've always loved these and dreamed of owning one, since one of the very first watches that I suppose you could say triggered me to become a watch obsessive was one of these 45 millimeter Chronomaster Opens. It was in the pre-owned box at the Tourneau at the Roosevelt Field Mall. That one was a black dial on a strap. This is white on a bracelet, but you could see why I was so impressed. I thought, wow, what would a person have to do in life to be able to deserve a watch like that? I was still thinking of watches in terms of milestones and commemorations of great achievements in life, and I still do think that way to this day. I wonder what I would have to do to deserve a watch like this. But a beautiful piece, featuring a lovely and intricate bracelet of multiple links, pronounced taper, alternate polish and satination. You can see removable links fixed by screws, a substantial and robust double folding clasp. Really cool. Oh, and of course you have a display case back should you wish to see the rest of the movement, which you can see right there. That is caliber 4021. That's the open dial with power reserve. Let's go a little bit upscale now. In fact, let's go all the way to the top. Greubel Forsey, out of La Chaux-de-Fonds. Founded in 2004 by Robert Greubel and Stephen Forsey, they had met at Audemars Piguet Renault et Papy in the 90s. First, they created Completime, a movement engineering house, white label for customers in the industry. That was 2001. 3 years later, they decided to create a watch brand that reflected their values exclusively, and Greubel Forsey was born. The first fundamental innovation, as they like to call it, the double tourbillon 30 degree. A 30 degree inclined 1 minute tourbillon inside an external 4 minute tourbillon, and the point was chronometry, and it has a impressive palmarès in Concours competition. Check out the 2011 Concours de Chronometry and the performance of the Greubel Forsey double tourbillon. But in 2013, they responded to client requests for a more visually accessible version of the tourbillon. So the double tourbillon 30 degree Asymetrique was launched, and that's exactly what we have here. The Asymetrique element is the off-centered tourbillon. So rather than being centered between the lugs, now it's been brought over the side so it's easier to see. And if you look carefully, it's even got a lateral viewport. Now we can enjoy the tourbillon and more obviously observe the 30-degree incline of that inner tourbillon. A dramatic portrayal and a watch that is simply packed with value. It was part of a 11-piece red gold limited edition. So they were made in white gold, red gold, and platinum, and this is the rose gold, or red, I should say, because it's 5N. The dial, though gray, is actually a solid disc of gold. The tourbillon is extraordinarily detailed. Overcoil, free sprung, 3 hertz beat rate. You've got that angled 1 minute tourbillon inside a flat 4 minute tourbillon externally. And when it sits on your desk at night, really in any position, the angular orientation of the tourbillon ensures that it will cancel out the effect of gravity, a little bit like F. Pigeon's vertical tourbillon. I find this one more interesting. Now there's a power reserve indicator disc over where 2 o'clock would conventionally be. Most Greubel Forsey watches use a hand index. This one uses a rotating disc, which I actually find is a little bit more fun. The watch does not have the super graphics that characterize so many Greubel Forsey watches. We have some text, but not the novel that they normally write. And then you can see that the degree of decoration on the Tourbillon is world-class. This pretty much defines the upper limit of what's possible. Rounded, polished surfaces, mirror finish on complex contours, tiny components finished as fine as if they were enormous. By the way, I'll remove that hair. Not part of the watch, rest assured. 2 barrels, and surprisingly, we've got 72 hours of power reserve. The bridges and the plates are made of German silver. We'll call it Maillot because we're not in Germany. We're in La Chaux de Fonds, where Greubel Forsey watches are made. You can see the bevels where they meet, and sharp inward creases are, again, the definition of what excellence is in this industry. If you're looking for the upper limit, it's going to be stuff like this, Dufour, maybe Languntine. Very, very impressive. Also impressive, solarized barrel covers, twin barrels. They make 1 rotation every 3.2 hours, so fast barrels, as they're called in the industry. That helps to flatten out the torque curve so that the timing doesn't ebb and flow much. Gigantic blued screws, but also note the presence of polished screws and golden chaton cups for all the pivots, including the barrel arbors. You could see that some of the engraving on the case back, such as the individual number and the notation of a unique edition, that's been freehand engraved. By the way, normally we would take the word unique to mean 1, but in this case, it means there's 11 of these in the world. So you'll own 1, and then there's 10 others. It's big, but it's maybe not as big as you think. It's 51.8 lug to lug, and that's really the number that makes the difference here. As you could see, I could wear this. It's a big watch, but it's not so large that you need to be shack to wear the thing. I would say my wrist wears it fine. If you want to go a little bit bigger just to be safe, let's say 17 centimeter circumference wrists and up. Also worth mentioning, this is something Greubel's been rolling out since 2021, but this is a plant-based strap. You can see on the bottom, it is animal-free. So a couple of advantages here. If you are humane or consider animals to be on a plane of sympathetic life form, then, well, that's great. It doesn't use animal hide. If you want something that lasts longer than a leather strap, that's also a win. If you want something that's biodegradable and sustainable, again, a victory. And if you're just a sybarite and you want something that's super comfy, the combination of a nubuck-like texture on the bottom with a suede, or I should say on the top with a suede bottom, should make you quite pleased. Taking a look at the buckle, not every Greubel Forsey has a folding clasp, so it's kind of cool to see that this one does. I feel like it should be mandatory on a watch this expensive, where the consequences of dropping the thing are almost on a plane with lighting your house on fire. So again, full clasp, a durable long-term strap solution, lots to love right here. Also lots to love from one of the original independents, established in 1997, I should say, and launched, as you see it here, in 2008. Urwerk was a 97 creation of Felix Baumgartner, his brother Thomas, and Martin Fry, the designer. Thomas would later leave, but Felix and Martin Fry have formed an enduring partnership. Martin is an industrial designer and stylist, Felix as the watchmaker. The 202 is an automatic winding version of the 201s. This came out in 2008. You can see it's got a combination of features here. We'll fire this up, get this going. And now we'll set the thing. So the watch is automatic winding. It's made of white gold. The shape is irregular, so it's rather difficult to characterize. The size of it without just putting it on my wrist. Moon phase, day-night indicator. And then you can see telescoping index indicator. So what time is it? It is 5:21. What time is it now? It's 5:30. The outgoing hour exits stage left. The incoming hour rotates in, and the index extends. And note how the telescoping index follows the minute track, perfectly contouring to its angular facets. And you can see that the carousel is an immensely complex construction of different materials, textures, tones, and colors. We'll do a loom shot, and you're probably going to be surprised at just how luminescent it is. If anything, it might be even a bit more intuitive to read in the dark, as you can more easily judge the hour, and as a result of the hour, the minute being indicated, such as 11:31 right now. It's a lot of fun. It's a wonderful piece of theater. We have it on Urwerk's rubber strap that originally debuted on the UR220. So it's rubber on the top, and while it feels like it might be felt on the bottom, this is another type of rubber that's been modified to feel like felt or suede. You could see that Urwerk introduced its variable turbine winding system with this model. So the idea is that by turning this device back and forth, you have the ability to modify the flow of air through the turbines. So as the system winds, the turbines move air, so displacement of air and rotation of the winding rotor occur in parallel, or maybe I should say in series, as one is downstream of the other. So if I am a very sedentary person, what I can do is I can set this thing to be super active and wind freely. If I'm a very active person, I can stop the winding entirely to avoid wearing out the mechanism. And if I'm somewhere in between, I can set it to a marginal winding rate. You can see that the colors plugging up the air passages reflect whether or not the turbines are permitted to spin freely or not. So here we go. Fully constricted, intermediate, and then finally, free winding. If you're like me and you work at a desk, you want this, so it'll wind with utmost efficiency. It's got a 48 to 50 hour power reserve. You can see on the wrist, I said it was difficult to characterize the size of this watch, and I stand by that. It's comfortable, and it's short across the wrist, but in white gold it's very heavy, which I kind of like. And then with the Velcro, you have an infinite degree of adjustments within the scope of the Velcro, so you don't have to worry about winding up in between pre-punched holes on a conventional strap. I always like to include a few value options in these shows, and launched in 2006, the Omega Seamaster NZL32 is that. Omega found a fun way to take no risks with America's Cup sponsorship, because if you sponsor Team New Zealand, there's always the risk that they won't win. But if you name your watch after a Team New Zealand boat that's already won, you can't lose. So as part of their collaboration with skipper Dean Barker, Omega launched this. This is the Seamaster Aquaterra NZL32 Regatta Chronograph. It came out in 2006, and it's named after the boat that won the 1995 America's Cup. So it's 42.2 millimeters in diameter, and it features a unique color-changing regatta timer. So you can see how the chronograph will count 5 minutes and then 10. That's just based on the coloration of a conventional chronograph register. But then we have these silver, blue, and red circular indicators, and each one indicates a certain amount of time. As the chronograph operates, each one of these little apertures is equivalent to 1 minute. Now, the watch is 150 meters water resistant, automatic winding, chronometer certified, but non-coaxial. So it's a little bit tougher than the coaxes, especially the coaxes that were being made in 2006. And we'll do a loom shot so you can see the watch in the dark. It is a sports watch after all. It's quite legible. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. And it's extremely comfortable. It's large, there's no getting around that, but it's not so big that I couldn't wear it or wouldn't wear it. Zoom out a little bit, get some perspective here. This is a watch that's technically interesting, and not just if you're a sailor. This is the kind of thing that's a lot of fun as a conversation piece, because the thing about Speedmasters and Seamasters is it seems there's tons of them, but they're all very similar. With a watch like this, you can get into the world of Omega, chronographs, Seamasters, even high sports. But the bottom line is that it's so unusual that short of something like the Apnea, there's really no other Omega Seamaster chronograph that's comparably fascinating or offbeat. A very cool watch. The base is a 2892 with a complication module on top. But you will note it also works as a conventional chronograph. We have chronograph 30 minutes here, chronograph 12 hours up at the top. And now we finish with a big piece, a very big piece, though not physically. This is 42.3 millimeters in diameter in steel from H. Moser & C, a 50-piece limited edition from the Streamliner collection, a watch that represents a flying tourbillon solid gold dial with grand faux enamel and a minute repeater all in one. We'll take a quick look here. This is the Streamliner minute repeater. If you remember the Endeavor concept minute repeater, mechanically very similar. The watch is big, but not so big that I wouldn't wear it myself. It's got the Divine Streamliner bracelet, which is absolutely awesome to wear and enjoy, super comfortable. And you can see that from just about any angle, for a watch that has a concept dial per Moser parlance, it's remarkably easy to read. Now, concept dials at Moser don't have any signatures, branding, indices, hash marks, and you've got that right here, and yet it's fairly easy to read the time. Still, if you're not quite sure, it is a minute repeater, which means you have the ability to do this. Simply request the watch chime the time, and it will do so. I'm going to set it as close as I can to 12:59 and try not to roll over. I'd rather hit 12:58 than hit 1 o'clock, because 1 o'clock is just not interesting from a repeating standpoint. Pull the slide. Look at the finishing on these gongs. Look at the finishing, both beveling and polish, on those steel strikers and the bridges that support them. This is the finest finish you will find on any Moser watch, past and present. Also, take note, we have a 1-minute tourbillon, effectively acting as the seconds hand, free sprung and beating at 3 Hertz. It is a flying tourbillon with no upper bridge to obscure your view of the mechanism. Then we have a grand faux enamel dial with a hammered base. The base is made of white gold, and then there are 3 different pigments applied over 12 firings to create the gradient aqua blue. The movement, which, as I mentioned, is the finest finishing you'll find on any Moser watch. It has a nickel anthracite coating. This is the HMC 8905, created initially in conjunction with MHC, later with Timeless after MHC's founder passed away. The degree of decoration, things like the mirror finishing and the rounded steel bridges here for the drivetrain, or the depth, I'll show you, the particular depth of the interior angles and the rounded mirrored bevels, things you don't see on regular Moser watches, they're present here in abundance. And impressively, it is a 90-hour power reserve, uncommon when you've got a power-intensive refinement like a tourbillon. Incredibly, it has a screw-down crown and 50-meter water resistance. Most minute repeaters have 0 for the purpose of channeling the sound out unobstructed by seals, but Moser has managed to make this substantially water resistant and a very vocal, sonorous, and satisfying repeater. Even the experience of pulling the slide is a pleasure due to the use of a Teflon coating underneath to make it super smooth. And you can see how comfortable these interlocked bracelet links are. They look good and they feel just as good. One of the finest watches available in the repeater segment today. It also has other points of interest, such as steel construction that makes it everyday usable. Remember, most minute repeaters are going to be some sort of precious metal, usually a dress watch, and thus minimally water resistant and very susceptible to scratches. With this, no such problem. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.